Okay, but like, look at the part where they track the actual timeline of male puberty. I mean, that is fucking insane.
Yeah.
Boys are literally having their voices crack at what, age 13 now?
Yeah.
Compared to 17 or 18 back in the 18th century. We are talking about a biological acceleration of 5 entire years.
It's deeply unsettling when you zoom out and look at the aggregate data.
Right.
And, it's not just boys. The onset age for girls has been dropping by like 3 months every single decade since the 1970s.
Jesus.
We're looking at a 15-fold increase in precocious puberty for boys in just the last 20 years alone.
Which means human biology is like fundamentally rewriting itself right in front of us.
Absolutely.
And if you are sitting there right now feeling like your body is constantly fighting you, or like modern food is literally poisoning you, you're not crazy.
No, you're really not.
This is exactly what Jordan Rubin and Joshua Axe are tearing apart in their book, The Biblio Diet. They are making this massive, sweeping argument that our bodies are fast-forwarding through development and breaking down because of two intersecting crises.
Right, environmental degradation and the explosion of ultra-processed foods.
Exactly. And their counterproposal is fascinating because it goes backward.
Yeah, they argue that ancient biblical principles aren't just cultural metaphors, They actually hold the ultimate biological blueprint for modern longevity, metabolic health, disease prevention.
It's crazy.
We're talking about an operating manual for human physiology that we've completely abandoned.
Because the root cause of this massive health freefall, like the early puberty, the skyrocketing infertility rates, where a huge chunk of the developed world is now below population replacement levels, it all starts in the dirt.
Literally in the dirt. The foundation of our food system is entirely dead.
The black gold crisis?
Yeah.
I couldn't stop reading this section. We constantly hear about, climate change, emissions, carbon footprints.
But nobody talks about the actual topsoil.
Right. In the early 20th century, a place like Iowa had 14 to 18 inches of incredibly rich, dense topsoil. Today, it's down to 6 to 8 inches. We've obliterated it with relentless monocrop tilling and just drenching it in synthetic chemicals.
Well, and to understand why that matters, you have to look at how a plant actually eats.
Okay.
A plant doesn't just suck up minerals like a straw. It relies on this massive, invisible, microscopic economy. The fungi and the bacteria in healthy topsoil literally digest the minerals in the earth and feed them to the plant's roots.
Yeah.
So when you kill that microscopic life with pesticides and synthetic NPK fertilizers, which are basically just fast food steroids for plants, the plant grows, it looks like a tomato, it's red and shiny, but it's completely hollow inside.
The nutrient collapse. I mean, the data shows that in the last 50 to 70 years, fruits and vegetables have lost up to 40% of their nutrient density.
Yeah.
You'd have to eat something like 8 modern oranges to get the same amount of vitamin A your grandparents got from just one.
Exactly. You are eating a biological shell. And because we are chronically starved of actual micronutrients, we are constantly hungry.
Right.
And what has the food industry given us to fill that void? What Rubin and Axe call the sinister six.
Right. The foods we supposedly need to eliminate immediately. And if we look at the two absolute worst offenders here, it's seed oils and what the book refers to as unclean meats, specifically pork.
Yeah.
I want to get into the mechanics of this, because if someone is drinking a supposedly healthy oat milk latte right now, this next part is going to ruin their morning.
It really is. Let's start with seed oils, what Dr. Kate Shanahan famously dubbed the hateful eight, canola, soy, corn, cottonseed, sunflower, safflower, grapeseed, and rice bran oils.
Which are in absolutely everything in the middle aisles of the grocery store.
Everything.
But the book points out that the problem isn't just that they are empty calories, it's how they are manufactured.
To get oil out of a hard seed like corn or rapeseed, you can't just squeeze it like an olive. You have to heat it to insanely high temperatures, use chemical solvents like hexane to extract the oil, and then bleach and deodorize it because it literally smells rancid.
That industrial processing is the key. When you subject these polyunsaturated fats to that level of heat and chemical treatment, the molecular structure breaks down.
Wow.
They become highly unstable. So when you consume them, they act as toxic free radicals in your body.
And a free radical is basically a molecule that is missing an electron, right? So it's unstable and panicked.
Exactly. It's roaming through your bloodstream, desperately looking for an electron to steal to stabilize itself, and it rips that electron right out of your healthy cell membranes.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it damages your DNA, it breeds systemic inflammation, and it's a primary driver of modern insulin resistance.
Yeah.
They literally change your cellular chemistry.
Okay, so that's the chemical processing side, but let's connect this to the meat side. Let's unpack the pork argument, because this is where the biological filtration mechanics get wild. It really does.
The book leans heavily on the idea of unclean meats from Leviticus. And historically, a lot of people, myself included, just write that off as archaic religious dogma, like, oh, they didn't have refrigerators in the desert 3,000 years ago, so pork went bad.
Right.
But look at the actual biology of a pig. A pig digests its food in just 4 hours. And they have a simple, single-chambered stomach.
Right. They are monogastric. If we
Yeah.
contrast that with a cow, which is considered a clean meat in these ancient texts, a cow is a ruminant. It has a multi-chambered stomach.
Right, 4 chambers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It takes a cow a long time to ferment and digest its food. Its biological engine acts as a highly efficient filtration system. The liver and the multiple stomachs screen out the impurities before they ever reach the animal's muscle tissue.
But a pig is a monogastric scavenger. In nature, it eats absolute garbage slop, feces, rotting carcasses.
Mm-hmm.
And because that digestive turnaround is only 4 hours, there's virtually zero filtration.
None.
The pig has no sweat glands to push toxins out. So it literally stores the toxic load of whatever garbage it eats directly into its fat and muscle tissue. And then you eat the bacon.
Yeah.
You are directly ingesting the stored, unfiltered toxins of a scavenger.
Which perfectly sets up the psychological trap the authors call out. Well, we have this modern mindset where people think they can eat whatever toxic, hyper-processed garbage they want, or meat from a biologically compromised animal, and then just like pray over it or take a multivitamin to magically make it okay.
Oh, the gravity analogy. This was brilliant.
So good.
Rubin and Axe point out that these ancient health principles are as steadfast as the law of gravity. You cannot jump off a 5-story building and expect the universe to magically give you cat legs halfway down for a flawless landing.
No.
So why do we think praying over a bacon double cheeseburger fried in rancid canola oil is going to magically reconfigure the physiological toxins before they hit our bloodstream? It is pure biological self-sabotage.
It really is. The rules of human physiology are not suggestions. So the logical next question is, if we strip away the ultra-processed oils, the hollowed-out vegetables, and the biologically sketchy meat, what are we actually supposed to use for fuel?
Right. Because if you look at modern diet culture, everything is demonized.
Yeah, everything.
Seriously. Depending on what algorithm feeds your social media, carbs are going to kill you, red meat will give you cancer, and fats will stop your heart. But the book completely upends this by pointing to King Solomon,
The wisest man.
historically recognized as the wisest, wealthiest man in the biblical text. The guy had unlimited resources. He could have imported any exotic superfood on the planet. And what was his daily provision for his court? Massive amounts of flour, meal, and red meat.
We're talking thousands of gallons of fine flour and dozens of pasture-fed cattle, sheep, and deer every single day. The wisest meal on earth was fundamentally bread and meat.
Which sounds crazy today.
But, and this is the absolute crucial distinction, it was not the bread and meat that we are eating today.
Okay, but I have to push back here. Telling the average American, or like a busy single parent, that the secret to longevity is eating massive amounts of bread and red meat sounds completely unhinged, especially with what we know about gluten sensitivity and heart disease.
Sure.
And practically, how is a regular person supposed to even source this ancient version of food? It sounds borderline elitist.
Well, it sounds counterintuitive until you look at the microbiology of ancient preparation. It's less about buying a $50 loaf of artisan bread and more about understanding why our modern bread makes us sick.
Okay.
Solomon wasn't eating Wonder Bread packed with preservatives and dough conditioners. The bread of antiquity was sourdough, fermented entirely with wild yeast and bacteria from the air.
Right, the wild fermentation. I actually think of sourdough like a giant game of Pac-Man.
That's a great way to put it.
When you naturally ferment dough For 24 or 48 hours, the wild lactobacilli bacteria act like millions of little Pac-Men. They go into the dough and pre-digest the starches. They actually break down the complex gluten proteins before the bread ever hits your stomach.
Exactly.
So by the time you eat a slice of real sourdough, the glycemic index has completely plummeted, the phytic acid, which blocks mineral absorption, is destroyed, and your body recognizes it as actual nourishment instead of an inflammatory bomb.
Yeah, the fermentation is an ancient biological preservation method that the food industry swapped out for synthetic chemical preservatives just to speed up the manufacturing process.
Well, that's Pete.
And the exact same biological shift applies to dairy. The book heavily advocates for these specific desert island superfoods, and one of the biggest ones is A2 cultured dairy.
Oh man, this was a total light bulb moment for me regarding the explosion of lactose intolerance. We just assume everyone suddenly became allergic to milk.
Because we're drinking the wrong milk. Thousands of years ago, a genetic mutation occurred in certain European dairy cow herds. It caused them to produce a specific protein in their milk called A1 beta-casein.
Yeah.
Today, due to industrial breeding for higher milk yields, about 95 to 98% of dairy cattle in the U.S. produce this mutated A1 milk. The biological problem is that when human digestion breaks down A1 protein, it releases a peptide called BCM7.
And BCM7 is an opiate, right? It acts as a massive inflammatory trigger in the gut.
Spot on. It triggers pro-inflammatory reactions, severe digestive distress, immunological problems. People think they can't digest lactose, but very often their bodies are just rejecting the BCM7 peptide from the A1 mutation.
Wow.
Original, ancient livestock like sheep, goats, water buffalo, and specific heritage cow breeds produce A2 beta-casein. Human breast milk is entirely A2. When people switch from standard grocery store milk to A2 milk or naturally fermented A2 kefir, the inflammation often just vanishes.
The body suddenly recognizes the fuel again.
Exactly.
And speaking of ancient fuel, we have to talk about the energy source they used in the East. The medicinal mushrooms. Cordyceps.
Oh, the 1993 Chinese female track team.
Yes, this is wild. In 1993, this team of Chinese female distance runners completely obliterated the world records for the 1,500-meter, 3,000-meter, and 10,000-meter events.
Shattered them.
It wasn't even close. And the international sports community immediately screamed doping. They ran endless drug tests, but they all came back totally clean. And their coach stated on the record that their insane stamina came from a diet heavily supplemented with Cordyceps mushrooms.
And modern cellular biology explains exactly why that works. Cordyceps are ancient adaptogenic fungi. When you consume them, they literally raise the body's supply of ATP adenosine triphosphate.
That's just the energy currency, right?
Right. It's the primary currency of energy for every cell in your body. Cordyceps don't just give you a caffeine-like nervous system stimulant. They actually increase your body's oxygen utilization and ATP production at the mitochondrial level.
It is so messy and yet incredibly liberating to read this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we are sitting here realizing that grass-fed steak, real fermented sourdough bread, raw butter, and adaptogenic fungi are actually the ancient blueprint for human longevity.
It's wild.
It's an absolute rejection of the modern guilt associated with eating real whole foods.
It's a total paradigm shift. But, and the book makes this abundantly clear, it is not just about what you put in your mouth. The timing of when you ingest this fuel is just as critical.
Right.
We have to pivot from the biological necessity of these ancient foods to the biological necessity of going without them entirely.
The 2047 food trap.
Yeah.
The data here is staggering. The average American now eats 5.7 times a day. We don't have meals anymore. We just constantly graze from the minute we wake up to the minute we go to sleep.
We have completely obliterated our circadian rhythms. Think about it. 100 years ago, 70% of the hyperpalatable foods we eat today simply didn't exist.
Yeah.
We certainly didn't have glowing screens and mini marts open at 2 a.m. selling engineered snacks. Our ancestors experienced natural cycles of feast and famine.
Yeah, but this is another area where I have to play devil's advocate. When people hear fasting, especially intermittent fasting, the immediate mainstream reaction is, isn't that just an eating disorder? Won't I just starve myself, wreck my metabolism, and lose all my muscle mass?
It's the most common fear, but the endocrinology proves the exact opposite. When you practice intermittent fasting, say, restricting your eating to an 8-hour window and fasting for 16 hours, your body triggers a massive spike in human growth hormone, or HGH.
Really?
Yeah. HGH specifically preserves lean muscle mass and forces the body to burn stored fat for fuel. But the real, undeniable magic of fasting is a cellular process called autophagy.
Autophagy. Self-eating. Which sounds like a terrifying sci-fi horror concept.
It does, but Dr. Roberta Gottlieb at the Cedars-Sinai Smith Heart Institute has the absolute best analogy for this. Think of autophagy as your body's internal cellular recycling plant. Just by living, breathing, and metabolizing food, your cells sustain oxidative damage. That damaged cellular material is essentially biological garbage. When you enter a fasted state, your cells turn on the recycling plant. They literally chew up that damaged garbage, break it down into base amino acids, and recycle it to build a brand new, highly efficient cellular engine.
But here's the biological catch. The recycling plant only turns on when the factory floor is closed. And insulin is the master switch.
Yes.
Insulin is a storage hormone. It tells the body to build and store. If you are grazing 5.7 times a day, your insulin levels stay chronically elevated. And when insulin is high, the autophagy recycling plant is completely locked shut.
Exactly.
The body says, we have incoming energy, stop cleaning and start storing. So the garbage just builds up.
And what does cellular garbage buildup look like over 20 years? It looks like systemic inflammation, premature aging, neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, and cancer. Fasting forces the body to stop processing external food and start cleaning the internal house. It drops blood pressure, it balances your hunger hormone, and it resets your entire metabolic framework.
Okay, so we fixed the dirt to get our nutrients back, we switched to ancient biological fuels instead of chemical processing, and we fixed the eating window to allow for autophagy.
Right.
But the Biblio Diet goes even deeper into these forgotten health hacks that sound legitimately insane until you look at the underlying science, like drinking salt water. We've been told our entire lives by public health officials that salt causes high blood pressure and will trigger a stroke.
Which is another massive, dangerous oversimplification. Refined, chemically processed white table salt, where they've stripped out all the trace minerals and added anti-caking agents, is absolutely terrible for you.
Right.
But natural mineral-rich salt, like a gray Celtic sea salt, is physiologically vital. And the story of Dr. Batmanglij is the perfect case study.
This story is unbelievable. So Dr. Batmanglij is a political prisoner in Iran in the late 1970s. The prison conditions are horrific, and the inmates are suffering from agonizing, crippling peptic ulcers.
Yeah.
He is a doctor, but he has zero medical supplies, no pharmaceuticals, nothing. So what does he do? He gives them water mixed with just a little bit of natural, unrefined salt. And he documented curing 3,000 inmates of severe peptic ulcers. 3,000. With nothing but salt water.
Because it targets the actual mechanics of cellular hydration.
Yeah.
People today are constantly chugging plain purified water out of plastic bottles, but they're still chronically dehydrated at a cellular level.
Wow.
Without sodium and trace minerals, pure water just sits in the extracellular fluid. It dilutes your blood and you just pee it right out. Adding a pinch of real mineral-dense salt to your water changes the osmotic pressure.
Right.
It literally acts as the key to open the cellular doors, allowing the water to actually enter the cell. It alkalizes the body and extracts excess acidity from your brain cells.
It's so painfully simple. But honestly, not as wild as the Ezekiel revelation. I am obsessed with this specific part of the book.
It's so good.
So Jordan Rubin is sitting in his prayer sauna, and he's meditating on this obscure biblical verse, Ezekiel 47.14. It talks about this river flowing from the sanctuary and fruit trees growing on the banks, and the verse says, their fruit will serve for food and their leaves for healing.
And for decades, natural health experts just glossed over that verse, assuming it meant basic garden herbs, like, oh, you should eat parsley or oregano for healing.
Right. But Rubin realizes the text is highly specific. It explicitly says the leaves of fruit-bearing trees. So he starts digging into modern biochemical research and realizes that what industrial agriculture considers literal trash, the discarded leaves of apple, pomegranate, olive, and mulberry trees are actually pharmacological gold mines. They are completely packed with unique polyphenols and antioxidants. They are massive cancer-fighting agents. Chinese and Native American medical traditions have boiled these leaves for centuries, but Western medicine ignores them because they're classified as agricultural waste.
Which seamlessly ties into the final and arguably most important pillar of the book, mindset medicine. Because you can drink all the olive leaf tea you want, you can eat pristine sourdough and fast for 16 hours. But if your brain is locked in a state of chronic sympathetic nervous system stress, your physical body will not heal.
The cortisol just blocks it.
Exactly. Neuroplasticity is the final frontier.
Enter Dr. Michael Moskowitz.
Yeah.
This guy is a highly respected pain specialist who gets into a horrific water skiing accident. He ends up suffering from agonizing, debilitating chronic head and neck pain for 13 years.
13 years.
He has access to the best modern medicine in the world and nothing works. So he decides to literally rewire his own physical brain structure.
He used functional MRI scans to map out exactly what a brain looks like when it is firing chronic pain signals, which areas light up and expand.
Okay.
And he theorized that if the brain is plastic, if it can learn pain, it can unlearn it. So every single time he felt the physical pain flare up, he would close his eyes and intensely visualize those exact pain centers shrinking on the map.
That is wild.
He relentlessly visualized the brain calming down, forcing his neural pathways to reroute. Sometimes he had to do it every few seconds.
And it worked. Within 6 weeks, the intensity of this 13-year chronic pain plummeted. Within a year, he was virtually pain-free. He shrank his own pain through forced, relentless neuroplasticity. He biologically proved that the brain can reorganize its physical structure if you forcibly change your thought patterns.
If we pull all these threads together, what we're really looking at isn't just a diet book.
Yeah.
The Biblio Diet is proposing a complete, radical paradigm shift. It is asking us to become bibliotarians, to take aggressive control of our health by rejecting this massive, hyper-processed chemical experiment we've been unknowingly participating in for the last century.
It is a return to the natural cyclical rhythms of how the human animal was built to interface with the earth, feasting on real, biologically appropriate, nutrient-dense foods, fasting to let the cellular machinery clean itself out,
Yes.
and utilizing natural medicine, mineral salt, tree leaves, and the immense power of our own neuroplasticity to repair the damage.
Yeah.
It's about stepping completely off the modern hamster wheel of just being chronically sick and tired.
And I think the ultimate takeaway, the thing we really need to sit with is this. 40% of our modern, highly engineered pharmaceuticals originally derived directly from plants. Aspirin came from willow bark, penicillin from mold. Yet, our modern lifespan is currently shrinking despite all of our incredible medical technology.
So, if the blueprint for human health has been hiding in plain sight for thousands of years, what other primitive health secrets are we arrogantly ignoring simply because they can't be patented in a lab?